our region, the primary public authority for this is the MTA. They have capital funding both those entities have capital funding. Some of that capital funding goes through this formula allocation process, and some of it comes directly down to individual projects. So that's part of the mix. And of course, then you have county and municipal capital funding, where local roads are owned by the local villages, towns, and cities. The counties also have some roads under their jurisdiction. In the cases of Nice Bus, the county has a direct relationship with the transit system, in Nassau County and in Suffolk County. So there's funding there that comes into this. Most of this funding is capital funding, okay? It's for capital improvements. Not all, but most. The operating side mostly falls on local jurisdictions to operate transit systems and so forth, and the owners of the roadways operate them. Okay? So that mess right here is how money flows in for transportation infrastructure. And I just wanted to point out that New York State DOT has 8 administrative regions, and that's the primary way that the money gets sub-allocated within New York State, both federal and state. In our area here, and the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council covers a subset of these 3 areas, all of Region 10 on Long Island, Nassau and Suffolk counties, all of New York City, which is NISTOP Region 11, and part of Region 8. So the money is being sub-allocated down to the administrative regions, and the MPOs, through our members, have to decide, do the planning and decide how the money is actually going to be used, and that's both for federal and some state funds. We have to follow this process. I'm not going to go through this, but there's a rather specific process that's in the federal law that we have to follow to make sure the federal money comes down. It starts with long-range planning, goes down into medium-range programming, and ultimately gets up into the upper left-hand side here, which is actual project implementation. Our Transportation Improvement Program in this region, or TIP, which is the medium-range programming, is usually developed every 2 years. It's a cycle that's coordinated on a statewide basis. And during each cycle, existing projects that are still under process are updated and new projects are added. So it's an ongoing process. And this link here is we have a visualized form of our TIP that's on our website. I'm not going to show you that now, but you can look at specific areas through that visualization, such as an area in Nassau County or Suffolk County, and see what projects are in the program around that area. These are the formula funding programs that come down from the federal government. There's a number on the highway side, a number on the transit side. They're all fairly flexible in that you can move money back and forth. Some significant sources that have been used here on Long Island include the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, also the Service Transportation Block Grant Program. And on the transit side, there are a number of different programs that can finance transit capital, either equipment or facilities. And these are heavily used by both bus operators on Long Island and by the Long Island Railroad. So these are the programs that are defined federally, that the funding comes down for various purposes in the transportation system. When the money comes down, there are planning targets that are identified for each individual New York State DOT region, and those are the planning targets that we program up to. And I just want to show you this in the interest of time. Our current Transportation Improvement Program, which was adopted last year for fiscals 17 through 21, totals $36 billion. $8 billion. Of that, $11 billion is federal. So the majority of this funding is not federal. It's state and it's local, and a big chunk of that local is the MTA. But that $11 billion that comes down from the federal government is certainly not something that we want to turn our backs on. We need that. It's a very important piece of the overall funding. Here in Nassau and Suffolk counties, $8.3 billion of that money is programmed here. Federal is 2.2, non-federal is 6.1. It's roughly 23% of the regional total. And when you look at the population, and again, these formulas are very much driven by population, these allocation formulas. The Nintink planning area is 12.7 million people. Nassau Suffolk sub-area is 2.9, which is 22.8%. So, it very clusely tracks with the population. You're 0.2% higher than you should be, so congratulations. I guess we could just end the panel at this point. And that program funding is used in a number of ways for a number of different projects that are coming through the planning cycle. Again, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but everything everything from planning over here to actual programming and implementation of projects. And just to give you a sense from the 15,000-foot level of the types of strategic projects that are in the process right now. And there's 1,800 projects in our TIP, but these are the high-level strategic projects. You can see a number of them here on Long Island. I'll just point out Connect Long Island is prominent here, that entire concept in Suffolk County. The LINK project in the NASA Hub is also prominent. Long Island Railroad East Side Access is prominent here. So those are some of the big projects that are being pursued that are relevant in Long Island. And the last slide I'm going to show you is on land use designations. We do designate land use working through our member agencies. These are areas where growth is either desired or should be emphasized given the improvements in the future. And if you flip these back and forth, you can see that the land use designations very closely track the strategic framework of transportation investment, which is important because clearly one of the things that's key to sustainability is transportation and land use being brought as closely together as possible so that you are most effective in your transportation investments and you're serving the people most effectively and the growth most effectively in the future. So with that, I hope I've been able to give an overview, and I'll sit down and everyone else. So thank you very much.
Alyssa, just before we start, I just want to say that we'll have time at the end for questions, so if you can just hold all your questions to the end, we'll address those at that time.
Okay, again, I'm Alyssa Pica, I'm the Executive Vice President of Long Island Railroad. Very happy to be part of the panel today, and what a better opportunity to talk about transportation infrastructure investment on Long Island. This particular session, and I brought with me a visual aid. And I think what I'd like to first point out is that you can see that transportation investment is alive and well on the Long Island Railroad system. Jerry told us about East Side Access, a very major, significant benefit that we're going to have in our region. Some of our projects that contribute to East Side Access are also federally funded, some are funded from the MTA capital program. But I think if you just step back and look at our system map, we have investments in Manhattan, we have investments in Queens, Nassau, and Suffolk County. And we really all have the one goal, and that's sort of the goal of our Smart Growth Summit today, is to make Long Island viable. Long Island's been a wonderful place for many, many decades, and we want to keep it that wonderful place. The veteran community, the mutability to Long Island, a wonderful place for our children, to settle and build their families, a wonderful place for our parents to remain in place and maintain. Everything we're doing is trying to facilitate all that goal, put those new downtowns get up and running. And transportation is really the backbone of that sort of effort. And railroad, we like to think, and maybe I'm biased, but is the backbone of the transportation system. So I'd like to talk about a couple of things. I know we've talked about East Side Access a great deal, and I'm sure people in this room know about it. It's a $10 billion investment. It's supposed to come online towards the end of 2022. It'll give us a new home in Manhattan. We're stuffed right now in Penn Station. We can't add any additional services. It will increase by 60% our ability to carry Long Islanders to Manhattan. They're still going to want to go to Manhattan. There's a lot of new markets emerging, but we know that that's always going to be a very significant market for us. We're going to bring people to the east side of Manhattan. Many people over-commute today. You see Penn Station is over on the west side of Manhattan. About 40% of our customers then recommute back east to get to their east side destination. So this is going to be a big travel time savings for them. Really a big boost for Long Island to just be able to have that growth, to be able, across the Long Island Road, to be able to be responsive for demand for new services and more frequent services, to Manhattan is really a wonderful opportunity. And every smart growth development, every developer out there really should be taking every opportunity to exploit that. We have that, it's being built, and we have to make the most out of it. One of the things that we've been doing at the Long Island Railroad while this project is being built out is we've been building out support projects, because when you have new landing spaces for trains in Manhattan and new services to provide, you need new trains to provide new train sets, you need new yards. We're building a yard right here in on our Mid-Suffolk yard. It's just to the south of our existing Ronkonkoma yard. That's where some of those trains will go to bed at night, so that they're positioned correctly in the morning, so that they can go one after the other to Penn, to East side to Penn East side and keep that service flowing and give people those transportation choices that they want. We're building things like pocket tracks. We're building one in Massapequa, Washington Bridge. Great, because we're operating the railroad differently. We can't continue to operate it the same way, and we have to be innovative in what we do. Those pocket tracks allow us to have our trains and our cruise equipment move more efficiently. They don't have to go all the way back to Babylon or all the way back to Port Washington Yard before they turn around and make a second trip. They can turn around midway. So people from Massapequa to Points West get additional service, and people from Babylon to Points West can get
There's not one
several
seat in the
stops
house.
around the ride into
Not one.
There's a nice flexibility, a nice opportunity to reimagine our service and our system. We always say that in 1910, Penn Station and East River tunnels opened, and that was a very substantial change. We are looking at similarly substantial changes that are in our country. It's a really wonderful opportunity to reimagine how the new Long Island is going to explore and benefit from all those. The headline story today is a project that we call Long Island Railroad Expansion. And you can see it's highlighted in yellow right there in the middle of our system. It's a 9.8-mile segment that we currently have 2 tracks on, and we were seeking to add a 3rd track to that segment. We're also seeking to do a number of other things. We'll talk a little bit about all of those things. But why am I talking about that today? Well, we hit a very important milestone in this project in that Monday of this week we released a draft environmental impact statement. So you can all go to modernlongisland.com and you can read about the project, you can see short videos about it, and you have access to all the information that we've worked on here. This has really been a tremendous effort. This project, as was noted in our earlier segment, this very facility is where our governor came in January of 2016, yes, it's still the same year, and announced that we're going to be working on this project. The 3rd track had to be added to the Long Island Railroad system. We're going to do it in a whole new way and conceive of it in a whole new way. And here we are, it's still the same calendar year, and we kicked off the project. We've gone through scoping in the spring, and here we are, the draft environmental impact statement. And what do you mean by really reconceiving the project and repackaging the project and making it in a new way? Well, really at the get-go, even before this project was announced, one of the backbones of this project was, substantial community outreach, stakeholder outreach. Basically, anybody who wanted to talk to us about this project would go and talk to them, explain it, and most importantly, listen. There's communities that are, that we talked about in our last session, the dense population of some of the Western Nassau communities are concerned about the project. But really just listen, talk about the project, educate people about the project, and the most important thing we can do is to incorporate that feedback that we get into the project, to demonstrate that we're listening, to work together in a collaborative way, and that's what we have done with this project today. So what's in the Long Island Railroad Expansion Project? Well, it's a 3rd track in that 9.8-mile segment. Why do we need a 3rd track? Well, if we look to the east and the west of it, we have a bottleneck right here in our system, and it's right smack in the heart of the system. So we got 2 tracks feeding this segment from the Huntington Port Jefferson Branch. We've got 2 tracks feeding it from our main line to the east, where we're building a double track, which is also very important. We have 4 tracks are going into 2 tracks, and then west of Floral Park, it balloons out to 4 tracks again. So we have just a natural bottleneck, and because it's a strategically important location in our system, because 40% of our service goes there. We have our Port Jefferson branch service, our main line service, the Oyster Bay branch joins the Hempstead branch. And believe it or not, our Montauk trains travel up the Central branch and the every day, 40% of the people that ride the Long Island Railroad are traversing this 10-mile segment. And so you can begin to see how critical it is for us, and you can begin to see how with so much dense operation, we can't even run trains in reverse peak direction in our peak periods. We have to stop, we have to turn off the spigot and stop sending trains east in the morning, for instance, so that we can use both tracks to meet the demand to the west. And that helps, that creates an imbalance. The workforce is different than it used to be. Some people work different hours, some people want to commute to Long Island, some people just want to get from one place to another on Long Island. So it's unhealthy for us to have that. And importantly, it also prohibits our reliability. So if we have one hiccup along, and nobody's ever going to stand up here and say we're not going to have a train malfunction, a signal malfunction, distress situation. Right now, when you have a train that has a distress situation and is disabled on this corridor, one train, and there's 1,000 people on the train, so one train is delayed, but sometimes the ripple effect of that delay, you didn't have 43 trains from just one very simple, simple event. Those 43 trains are similarly carrying 1,000 people. So you can see how this, this kind of grates on, and some of them are not catastrophic, but they're enough of a delay that you're getting to work like that. You're not making your meeting, that you can't rely on the train that you want to get you there, so in the future you take a train an hour earlier. So it does grate on people's lives and affects their choices of whether to take transportation or not. Not only does it affect these branches that have 40% of our service, but some of those trains behind that broken down train, one of those 43 ripple effects, was supposed to get to Penn Station at a certain time, discharge its passengers, and then take another trip out to Long Beach. So now that Long Beach service is similarly impacted because we have such an integrated system. So from a rail perspective, could not be better. It's what we need to really get the best bang for the buck for all of the investments that we're making. To really open up our system and have meet the new market opportunities that are there, and most importantly, be reliable, be a railroad that people can count on. Because it's great if you're going to Penn and GCT, but if nobody can count on you to get there reliably, it's not, you're not going to get the full benefit of that. But there's more. So I had to start with the railroad perspective, right? Because this is an important railroad infrastructure. But this project has been reimagined in a way that will have wonderful benefits throughout Long Island, even for those who do not use Long Island Railroad. There are 7 at-grade crossings along this corridor. And at those at-grade crossings, those dates are down because we have that dense service. It may be that 27 hour in some of the peak hours. That number is going to go even higher on the additional service on each side. So all 7 of those grade crossings are being treated as part of this project. All 7 of them are proposed for elimination, which changes the character of the corridor, which changes north-south roadway mobility, which improves air quality, and improves. Another benefit of that is right now at all those grade crossings, you hear a lot of horn blows from the trains that go by. They're mandated to blow their horns. You hear a lot of bells all day long. I tried to count up the number. It's some astronomical number. Once those grade crossings are separated by the roadway going under the railroad, and in some cases maybe just closed because you'll have the adjacent grade crossing will be free. All that noise will abate. You won't have those mandatory chemicals, you won't have those gates coming down and those bells, and so that is another benefit that this project offers. This project does not impact any residential properties. Yes, we've had versions of this project that required residential slivers of properties or property takings, and this has been finally tuned. We have the absolute working for housing.
So you may wonder how I come to be involved in the third track project. A while back I was mayor of the village of Greenport. And Greenport, for those of you that aren't aware, was the original terminus of the Long Island Railroad when it was built in 1844 to connect New York with Boston. Hard to hear?
Yeah.
Thank you. I was saying that the railroad was originally constructed in 1844 to connect New York with Boston. People would come out on the train to Greenport, get off the train, onto a steamship, across Long Island Sound, and then back on the train through Connecticut and Rhode Island and up to Boston. I can argue that Greenport, as a result, was the first transit-oriented development on Long Island. But it's true. If you look at the history of the village, you'll see that the big boom in Greenport occurred between 1844 and about 1900. Actually, most of the houses in the village date to that period. So I can speak personally to tell you the value of having this type of transportation alternative available to a village like Greenport. I also come to it through my capacity as a consultant to the Roush Foundation, which is the publisher of the Long Island Index. In 2013, the Index decided to focus on the capital program of the Long Island Railroad. We examined the second track project, we examined East Side Access, and we examined the third track project. As most of you may know, the third track project died a painful death in 2005 as a result of I don't want to cast any aspersions, but it failed as a result of, I think, in part of the way it was rolled out and the way the local communities were not brought into the conversation in the way that they are this time. Our report showed that the foundation's interest is in economic development on Long Island. And our report showed that without third track, the reverse commute that is bringing back other regions like Long Island throughout the country, Boston, in San Francisco, in Birmingham, Alabama, in many other places around the country where kids want to live in the urban centers but are interested in working out in suburban areas as long as they have transit. They will not drive. Young people are not going to commute to work the way we have by car. They want transit access. And because of the constraint along that stretch, by the way, the 2 tracks on that 9.8, one track was laid in 1844, the other one was laid in 1890. Those same 2 tracks are the tracks that we have here today. There's been no expansion of that capacity. In 1890, the population of Long Island was 100,000. Today it's 3 million. Same 2 tracks. And because of that constraint, you can't have a reverse commute. I think it's 90 minutes every morning and again in the evening. The trains can only run in one direction. So Lisa explained to you about the operational difficulty that presents in terms of breakdowns and equipment problems, but it also completely forecloses the opportunity for somebody who lives, like my son, who lives in Brooklyn and is a computer tech guy, who would be interested in a job in Hicksville if he could get there on the train, but he can't get to work on Long Island by train. So to quantify the impact of that, the index undertook an economic impact study, and we showed that in construction, this project would produce 2,250 jobs, $910 million in personal income, and $910 million in gross regional product. And I noticed with interest that those figures were validated in the DEIS that was released this week. That's just in the construction phase. After 10 years, there would be an additional 14,000 jobs, 35,000 new residents on Long Island, and most importantly, 40% of whom would be in the critical age bracket between age 25 and 44, just what we need. There'd be $40 million in new sales tax revenue, $103 million in new property tax revenue, $3 billion in new personal income, and $5.6 billion in new gross regional product. As Lisa mentioned, last year the whole scenario turned when the governor decided to endorse this project and to move the process ahead with the environmental review. But that brings you down to the question, what about those communities along the way? I mean, a lot of this benefit, and arguably it's true, a lot of this benefit will accrue to areas that are east of, beginning in Hicksville and east. But the governor, through the incredible efforts of the team that he's put on the ground, I want to credit Lisa Black and John McCarthy, who are in the back here today, have done an extraordinary job reaching out. I think anybody who lives along that corridor has heard from them at some point along the way, at least once. And they've identified some of the critical issues that this project, massive project, is going to have on those communities. And as a result, incorporated in the new plan, aside from eliminating all of the eminent domain exercise that was so offensive in the first rollout, they're going to build 6 new garages with 2,500 new parking spaces. They're going to rebuild 5 of the train stations so that you have modern train stations with full-length platforms that can accommodate the entire length of the train. They're going to build sound walls along most of the corridor to protect the residential neighborhoods from not only the noise, but the visual blight of those trains. I left something out. Oh, well, Lisa talked about the 7 grade crossings that are going to be eliminated. So there's, if you take that as a package, 2,500 new parking spaces, 5 rebuilt train stations, 7 grade crossing eliminations, and sound walls along through that corridor, you're going to have a massive transformation of that corridor in a positive direction. And this is going to improve property values. Anybody who's living along there now is going to see less noise, see less of the train, hear less noise, and be able to move back and forth more easily from north to south. These are major benefits for the locality, and I think the governor and his team are to be commended for including them in the project. This is now a $2 billion investment in Long Island that is really critical to Long Island moving into the 21st century. How can you expect, I mean, it defies common sense to suggest that a 21st century economy on Long Island can thrive on 19th century infrastructure. Lastly, I just want to talk about another role that I have, which is as executive director of the Right Track for Long Island Coalition. This coalition is a private sector effort to support the governor and the railroad in their effort to build this project. We've grown to 331 members, and in addition to our 331 members, we have 3,000 commuters that have signed on in support, and we're still growing. We estimate now that we represent 1 million people on Long Island, between the townships, the union members, all of the various organizations that have signed on. We have all of the big hospitals, all of the big universities. This is a very big group of support, and we encourage you to join us. And I want to state, there's some people here in the room today that represent the local communities. We are committed to continuing to work with the MTA and the governor's office to see to it that negative impacts that are bound to occur from a project of this size are adequately addressed and minimized to the greatest extent possible. And I extend the efforts of the coalition to see to it that that happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Mike Setzer. I'm the CEO of Nice Bus. And first of all, I want to introduce Nice Bus to you very briefly. Nice Bus is really a partnership between a public partner, Nassau County, who owns all of the assets and receives the public funds, receives the federal money, and retains control of the big decisions, fare levels and service levels and annual budgets. And that policy-making function is performed by Bus Transit Committee, and Joel Verse is one of the county executive appointees to the BTC is here. So they make the big policy decisions. The other partner is the company that I work for, Transdev, and we execute those decisions. So we employ about 1,000 people. We buy the tires and put fuel in the buses and all those things that are necessary to get them on the street every day. And so in that function, and by the way, we are also, as you can see, a sponsor of the summit here because we believe very strongly that bus service is intimately integrated into the economic life of our entire community, and we want to be part of the larger discussion also. So we've been here just about 5 years. We're coming up on our 5th anniversary. We started January 1st, 2012. About 18 months ago, we were comfortable enough and confident enough that we had our hands on the operation, and so we said, well, let's start to think about what could be and what should be in the future. That the traditional transit product that we offer and have offered for many years may not be everything that you all want and that you all need in order to meet the goals that you're after. Basically, the big bus on the fixed route is the same product we've offered for 75 years maybe. And while it's still the workhorse, and always will be, there might be some other things that could work. So we developed a thing called Transit Development Plan. And I'd be happy to share one of these with you electronically. We have a booth out here, so if you want to stop by and ask, we'll get your contact information and send one to you. But what we did in the plan was first to do a really detailed analysis of what was. And if you're a real transit nerd, you'll find it fascinating. If you're not, you'll find it soporific. But maybe the important point in there is of the 40-some routes that we operate today, half of the passengers are on 5 of them. The biggest route in the system carries 15,000 passenger trips on a normal weekday, and the smallest one about 100. So there's a huge range of needs that we meet, but up until recently, we were meeting them with the same product, one size that did not fit all. And that was the 40-foot bus on fixed route with a fixed schedule. So what's wrong with that? Well, it's a great product for some people, but it's probably not what millennials want. It's probably not what all of us want. So we said we got to develop some other ideas. So the second half of this is a toolbox of ideas for bus service. Now, we recognize that rail service is absolutely essential to Long Island also, but bus service is our patch. So we stuck to our knitting, not meaning that great ideas don't exist on the rail side. They certainly do. And in fact, I would say that Nice Bus is an extension of the MTA in so many ways. A lot of our customers are going to Long Island Railroad stations. A ton of our customers are going into Queens to subway stations. So if you think of the metro system writ large, we're a part of it. We're sort of the eastern end of it in many ways. So I'm going to talk about two of the big ideas in here. There are more that you might want to hear about later or talk about or learn about. The two big ideas are what I'd call right-sizing. And right-sizing means creating some smaller, cheaper business models that serve those places where the demand is relatively light and dispersed. And at the other end of the spectrum, it means bigger, heavier services where the demand is very heavy, like that corridor with 15,000 trips a day. So one of them, we're actually working on these things right now. We've got a small experiment underway in Elmont that we call the Flexi. And it is small buses that do a couple different things. Actually, they do three different things. They operate as a fixed route bus part of the time. They also operate as a demand responsive bus, meaning that they'll come to certain stops if you call and order it, but if not, it won't. So it's fixed route and demand responsive. And then also in off hours, it can serve as a substitute for able ride transportation for people with disabilities. So trying to develop a more affordable product that meets people's needs at least as well as the traditional product did. At the other end of the spectrum, we're just about to receive 5 larger articulated buses, which we will deploy on that huge route that I talked about before, where it seems like there can never be enough capacity, where demand is so heavy that during the peak hour, we're passing people up because they can't get on the bus, even though we've got a bus every 5 minutes. So that's the first big idea, trying to find a family of products right-sized to the actual demand. The second big idea in here is what's happening in the rest of our society and economy, and that's moving to the technology-enabled product from the sort of fixed, static product. So we've begun using some federal funds. We've begun investment in technology and taken some baby steps toward what I think the future will be. And the future, I think, will be buses that you order up as you might do Uber. If you're a millennial, there are 2 things you don't want. One of the things you don't want is to own and be a captive, either physically or financially, of your own automobile. The other thing you don't want is to stand on a corner in the rain with a paper schedule in your hand, hoping that bus arrives when the schedule says it's going to arrive. What you want is something like Uber. So we think that there is an evolution just beginning to move transit service away from this very static model to a more dynamic model. The initial steps that we've taken there are to install a pretty complex, pretty robust GPS system that allows us to see what they're doing right now, and which ones are off route, which ones are on break, and where the supervisor is, and where the repair truck is, and all those kinds of things. That's a step towards that. Also from that system, we provide a service to your mobile device, your smartphone, where you can actually see your bus. You can see all the buses, or you can see your bus coming, or you can have it tell you when your bus is approaching. You can't order your bus yet on there, but you can begin to monitor it and time your arrival at the bus stop so that it's about the same time as the bus, which would be very nice during blizzards or below zero temperatures. Those are baby steps in the direction of a more technologically enabled transit system in the future, which is what our hopes and dreams are about. And now I'm going to rain on that parade a little bit, in fact a lot. Like Suffolk County earlier this year, and like Westchester County in April, we are in a budget situation that is tied directly to Nassau County's fiscal situation. Suffolk cut a bunch of service. Westchester cut a little bit of service. We are about to begin the process that may end up, depending on the decisions made by the county, that may very well end up with service cuts in Nassau County too, which we hate. I would like to be talking about anything but that. But all three of those counties share one thing in common, and they share in common with about half of the transit systems around the U.S., and that is that we don't have dedicated funding. Our basic financial resources come from appropriations by local and state government. So we have public transportation has to be considered alongside and in balance with public health and public safety and public education and a lot of other things. And when our local governments have to make tough decisions, sometimes we don't like it. Some of the tough decisions are made about our service. The MTA, on the other hand, in Los Angeles, by the way, one of the biggest systems that's in that same boat today is the third biggest system in the United States, which is Washington, D.C., Washington Metro Area Transit Authority. They just cut a bunch of bus routes. They're cutting train routes right now because they depend entirely on appropriation from the two states, Virginia and Maryland, and the District of Columbia, and they're not appropriating enough money to maintain their service. So like them and like the other suburban counties here, unlike the MTA, unlike Los Angeles, unlike a lot of the other systems around the country which are growing and developing, we're stuck with whatever our local governments can afford instead of having a dedicated source that A, doesn't have to be traded off with other important public benefits, and B, grows a little bit as our expenses also grow. So that's the bad news. We've got some good ideas, I think. I'd love to hear what you think about them. We've got some good ideas. We'd like to be able to implement them. This doesn't look like the year that we're going to be able to move forward, and in fact, we may have to move backwards. So, thank you very much.
Yep, so it's me and then lunch.
Talk about competition.
Great.
We will have time for a few questions, don't worry. I think, unless John goes really long.
Have you ever heard me speak before? Put your feet up and relax. Okay, so as I said before, my name is John Durst. I'm the president of the Long Island Federation of Labor, and that's union. So what's our center point is good jobs, good union. And how does that fit in with all of this? Well, first of all, the second track, the third track, that's something that we've been pushing for as long as I can remember. We were talked to the late Norm Levy, Chuck Fischillo, who were great advocates for this. And you know, Dave was very nice. He said he didn't want to say anything bad about anybody, but I get paid to do that. So, so it's okay. It's just I don't have a lot of patience for the BS. That's just not how I am. And you can't have smart growth if you don't have good jobs. You can't have smart growth and you can't develop Long Island if you don't have good jobs for young people, middle-aged people, and so even some of us old folks. Okay, and this is it's all centered around us. Mike, you talked about cutting the service, which is which was a great report, but then you ended it with cutting service, and they did. They cut it in Suffolk. But the truth of the matter is, I don't know anybody who has parked their Lexus or Mercedes to get onto a bus. It is the people who need the bus the most that suffer. the people who have the lower paying jobs, the middle class jobs, people who don't have a car, who need that bus. It's the students who go to our community colleges. They depend upon those buses. And when our county executives and our transit systems decide to make the cuts, it's on their backs. And that's a problem. That's a problem for the future of Long Island. That's a problem for smart growth. It's a problem for transportation. Because you're right, the millenniums, you know, and I still can't figure out what the hell is a millennium, where does it start, where does it end. But once you get past baby boomers, that's me, I don't know. All right? But the truth is, they don't. You know, I have people who work in my office. They wouldn't own a car if I paid them to, and I do. But they take transit, they take the subway, they take the train. But without our buses and without, you know, the second and third track, we won't have the growth, we won't have the future. When I was a kid growing up, I lived in Montauk, and I remember when they raised the tracks in Montauk. I remember the construction, but I also remember the difference it made in our community. And I lived 2 blocks from the train station. I remember going with my father, you know, we take him up to the train on the right, go into the local stationery store, candy shop, sweet shop. Okay, get the papers, get on the train and go. But now we have people that work in my office that come from Brooklyn. They come from the city, come from Queens. They can't get here. So it's a real problem. And I'm very thankful for the energy and the leadership of the governor who said, okay, enough of this BS, we're getting it done. You know, and that's the truth of the matter is that's what we've needed for a lot of years. So we have this, and you know, to go back to the original point, it's about jobs. Where's Ryan? Where's the presentation? How do we do this? Well, you sure as hell don't think I'm doing it. I don't have to do it. Where's the video?
The moderator should have it.
The moderator has it? You have it? Well, I'm not acting it out, you know. My God, I can entertain it.
Then we won.
Okay?
Do you have a flash drive?
Yeah? Okay, thanks. This is Ryan Stanton. He's our political director at the Fed. He's also, look how handsome he is. He's
He's a millennial.
Look, this is what Ryan is going to eventually pull up, okay, is an operation that we have developed, the Long Island Federation of Labor, the National Suffolk Building Trades, the United Way, to address needs for good jobs, middle-class jobs. It's a pre-employment opportunity for young people who've been disadvantaged in life, maybe had some trouble, maybe have been incarcerated, maybe who are trying to get their lives straightened out. And in affected communities, in particular, where they go through a pre-apprenticeship program. Now, I will tell you, now Erica's not here, is she, Roger?
No.
Erica Rector, who is the head of our program, could have been a drill sergeant in the Marines, okay? Because class starts at 9 o'clock, it starts at 9 o'clock. You come in at 9:01, so long, have a nice day. Because what she has is she's developed the system of saying, when you come to work on time, you do what you're supposed to do. And it starts with day 1 of training. Now, Ryan, is it on? It's not on yet?
There's an
Okay.
open
So this is
Wi-Fi,
a
no password.
lovely training where she teaches. You know, I joke because it's what I do, but the truth of the matter is that this is dead serious. This is an issue that affects the future. You know, I have 4 children and 6 grandchildren, soon to be 6 grandchildren. I don't want them leaving Long Island. I want them to stay here. I want them to be able to have a community in which there are good paying jobs and they can afford to live here. And we can do all the, you know, we can do Heartland and we can do, you know, Wine Dance and we can do Huntington Station. And these are wonderful communities, wonderful. But if they don't have a good job, and they can't pay the rent, and they can't have a mortgage, what the hell good is it? And if they can't get there, it's a problem. So it's all interconnected. And that's the focus of the labor movement. A lot of you folks don't have a relationship with the labor movement, and shame on you because you should. All right? Because the truth of the matter is, we are the community. We are your neighbors. I had all these great numbers, but then Dave gave him in his report. He says in his report, I left something out. I turned to him and says he gave my freaking report. I mean, I never say it. But as you can see, I managed. We don't have it? No service. We have no service. You have no idea how much you've missed. Okay? Opportunity Long Island. And you can look it up, because everybody's got a smartphone. Okay? You don't have to do it now. You don't have to do it right this minute, because, I'll feel ignored. Okay? Well, Opportunities Long Island is a phenomenal program that have taken young people and given them the confidence and the tools to get good paying jobs, middle class jobs, an opportunity to get into the building trades. And the opportunity to get into the building trades is a step toward good middle class job. You got it?
You want to show it on my phone?
Well, I apologize, John, that we don't have the internet available, but we do have about 5 minutes. I sort of got the 5-minute warning sign, so...
So you want me to shut up?
Well,
Denise, I'm married a long time. I've been told to shut up before.
no, we want to have the opportunity
All
for
right,
our folks
can
here.
I have 30 seconds more?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. That was taking it anyway. All right, look, obviously a little off topic because we're going to do the Opportunity Long Island. If you get a chance, Opportunities Long Island, it's worth it to see. And to see what a difference this has made in the lives of people and what it can do for Long Island. And it all ties in to the transportation, to smart growth, and building our communities. Thank you.
Okay, so much of what was offered up here, I'm sure generated a lot of thoughts and questions, and I have a bunch myself, but I'm going to open it up to the room. I see Trudy is chomping at the bit. Go ahead.
I hear repeated, we don't know about the funding. The funding is lessened. Is anyone thinking about where we're going to get funding when we can't get what we have gotten over the past years?
Yes. One of the things we have to do in this process is to forecast funding out for 25 years. And we make a lot of assumptions when we do that, but it's very difficult because Congress passes these authorization bills in 5 or 6 year increments. We don't know what's going to happen in the next one, much less the next 3. So you make assumptions, you do trend analysis. That's just on the capital side. And of course, the MTA does similar exercises with its financing, which is part of this. So the answer is yes, but there's a lot of unknowns.
Right, and then is there any way to lessen the unknowns and look at new options?
It's difficult, but I think one of the ways to do that is innovative financing. Not necessarily focusing on what we've always gotten in the past, but looking at new ways to finance projects. And that is coming into play more and more, both on Long Island and elsewhere in the region, where impact fees, credit, all different ways of approaching a major project like the third track might be brought into play. That's the only way to really handle the uncertainty, because there's nothing you can do at the federal or state level that makes that go away.
I just want to take a moment to recognize Congressman-elect Tom Suozzi, who just walked into
I'd like to be able to answer that woman's question as to where to find the money, but I'm still trying to find the bathroom.
Right. And we're sure Congressman champion for Long Island and making sure that we get our fair share of federal funding.
Well, yes, he will.
I have so many questions, but I'll try to keep it short. First of all, what you just said, John, about kids and not wanting to have a car. It's a shame that to leave Stony Brook and get to Penn Station, it takes 2 hours. And you have to stand at the Huntington Station to switch trains. And this is in 2016. So I hope that that's in the pipeline for the future, because the North Shore is just so slow. You know, when you stop at Maryland and you stop at Willisville, it stops. That's number one. Number two, when I was in the legislature, we looked at ICE-T funding and intermodal transportation ideas. Are there less expensive plans also in the hopper? There is an abandoned train. There used to be a train stop in Setauket. And I thought for a long time, what if we had a train stop that didn't have any parking? Because we're right near a greenways trail where people could walk to it, someplace where people could put their bikes, and just be a walk-on train station, no cars. I'm sure that must exist somewhere else along the lines, and perhaps that could be something that we're looking at in intermodal transportation. With buses, I had a bus route that I had suggested in Suffolk County. It was one of the ones that was cut because it was lightly traveled. And I believe when we were looking at those different bus routes, there was a reluctance to look at smaller buses, and I remember asking if that was a possibility. Are there restrictions or regulations where a public bus company can't have a smaller bus, or change? Is there anything that restricts you as far as looking at those smaller buses?
No, whatever size bus suits the operation is there's no restriction. I think probably what you ran into is that smaller buses don't last as long. They don't save a lot of money. If all you've got is a smaller bus, the guy driving it costs about the same. So they probably, I'm guessing that was it. Although
Well, those are my questions.
I'll jump in on the Stony Brook.
Okay.
I was once a Stony Brook student. I don't remember taking 2 full hours. I refer again to my map, because it's all kind of distracting. Right, we're talking about the railway. So of all the projects you see on there, this is not, these are the projects that are under construction or in the planning process. But we are always thinking about what are the next horizon of investments that what will make our service better. In fact, right now we're on the areas of railroad strategy. We're looking at a future after Eastside Access, after these investments are set, and we're looking at those demographics, those, the mix of things that we could do, the potential that we could do. Some evaluation, what does it make the most sense to do? For Jefferson Branch is always, we always sort of toy with electrifying it and then pull back. Electrifying it and pull back. Very frustrating. We bought mobile locomotives, and at the time, it's just as good as electric. They didn't really, some of them go into Penn Station, and the ones that do are very well subscribed. But they didn't pan out as robust. So again, we're faced with, as we're looking at our network strategy, what can we do for Jefferson Branch? What does it make the most sense to do? It's very costly to electrify it in a single track. Double track it and keep it as a diesel branch, and we electrify the single branch. Those are a lot of complex cost and demand. How does electrifying Port Jefferson Branch affect the main line? It was a magnet, and every day in Suffolk County everybody's drawn to the magnet because they have a parking space and they have frequent service, and then every evening they disperse from the magnet.
And that's all that vehicular
Right,
traffic.
and if the service we could offer on the Port Jefferson Branch was maybe not as robust as the main line, but robust enough to keep those people that live closer to one of those stations home, that would create a lot of space and capacity within our system. So I can tell you that we're definitely looking at it, we're very cognizant of it, and it's sort of being looked at in the next what's that rate say?
This is a question mostly for David and Lisa. I think there's been a couple of different anecdotal comments about the opportunity of economic development that's presented by the investment in Third Track and all of the other investments, particularly in for commuting, but also in terms of intermediate travel within Long Island. I'm wondering if you can comment more specifically on what and where you think those economic development opportunities are once you have the improved system, and if there are other policy or investments that are not about the transportation system itself that are needed to basically ensure that you're actually capitalizing on the investment.
So I think you see the evolution of the Smart Growth Summit as I talked about today, and when Joy said, hey, what happened? Did this get easier? So I think the fact that we have this robust system, you're seeing the development occur that is phenomenal. And I have sat here, 10 years prior when nobody wanted to do anything, and now we have, Mineola, and now we have Wyandanch, and Montauk's right behind it. So I think the fact that we have this robust system, we have this coming in, and there's some promising more in the future. I think once you plug in the double track, that's going to be startling. And I think just the fact that it exists and there's other successes to grow from. I think there's other successes.
Just in terms of an anecdote, I can tell you that I had a conversation with the developers of the Ronkonkoma Hub project, and they told me that they've been soliciting employers to locate in Ronkonkoma, and that they were in conversation with one that would have brought 200 jobs that ruled it out because of the absence of a reverse commute opportunity. So I think, if you have the capacity, I think what will happen is that the communities along the corridor and the other branches will see the opportunity that's inherent in this capacity and respond accordingly, as Brookhaven Town did with the Ronkonkoma Hub project.
You could look at Stamford and White Plains as an example, where they have capacity and their reverse peak and the business that came through with that capacity.
Actually, the very busiest station on the Metro North system is Fordham in the Bronx. It's mostly reverse commute. Yeah. Mostly reverse.
Okay, my questions are a couple. One's about one of the other, that's about the buses on Freeport. We have the TV station and we don't have a cap store. I just want to say that. But I'm also involved interested in alternative transportation, like bike walks, Long Island, and that type of thing. There needs to be bike lockers at a lot of the stations. For the bike lockers, you would have less of a parking problem because there are a lot of people that want to bike to where they are. Goes to the bus thing. They can take your bike to the bus, put your bikes on the bus, and transfer around that way. The other problem with the buses, and I know that it's a route that's going to be cut, is the South Route in Freeport. South Route Freeport's all senior citizens, students, and handicapped people that use that bus. Once that stops, people can't go to the grocery store, they can't go to the train station, they can't get to their college, they can't get anywhere. It's a horror. It's a real horror. And these are the two major things for my village, and that's part of it.
The Freeport, so I'm sorry that you're having this problem with the Freeport station. We are aware of it. We are trying to work with the village. We did a very substantial cleanup effort. I know that there was frustration and we were trying to light bulb replacement, extra trash, disposal and things like that. We are trying to keep up with it and keep up with the appearance of it because we know that it's a very open. We want to trash cans turned over and graffiti and things like that. So we are aware of it. And we've had a good partnership with the village. We clearly have to keep working together to solve those problems. The bike walk is an interesting question. The biking to the station is a tricky business. It's nice in the nice weather, not so nice in the not so nice weather. I will say to you that having been around the railroad for a while, somehow it works in Long Beach. In Long Beach, you go in the middle of the winter and you can't believe the number of bicycles that are there. When I first saw it, I thought, there must be people in apartments who just keep their bicycles there, but it's not. They, in all sorts of weather, they do bike there.
They have a bike share program there too.
Yes. So the bike lockers have been problematic. We've invested in them, and other municipalities have invested in them, and there was not an interest in maintaining them. So it seems like a natural. It's done. Broadly in Europe, but it's we really don't have it's a just like an example because you see it occurring there. But it certainly would take up a lot less space than parking. We do have bike racks at a lot of our stations. To the extent that people are partying and willing to come in all sorts of weather and you know, they might get back on it when they
I think the issues with parking over time as Eastside Access comes on board and having parking at that, and the first mile, last mile issue would look together and look at, as she said, intermodal kind of other options, whether it's biking or maybe lift with carpools into the train station, are things that should be looked at, technology-enabled kind of solutions, because we'll end up spending a ton of money on parking garages and miss the opportunity to really cut back on traffic congestion.
I think that the solution has to encompass all those things. You know, we have a deficit of parking, and we're able to put some more parking in where it's desperately needed on some of our mainline stations, but that's not the be-all and end-all. We don't intend to build a parking spot for every customer that's coming. That's not the
Right,
definition of success. We want more people to drive. They're going to park their car. They're going to drive their car. We want them to ride together, right? So they will be accommodated in that way.
Right, so technology-enabled solutions, it's a complete street solutions that enable more people to work, more growth and stuff can solve the parking problem because you won't have people wasting their time leaving cars in parking lots all day.
It has to be integrated and broad. It has to, you know, appeal to a million different stores out there. Everybody's traveling their own path in one way or another to get to the train station. The millennials, the share economy. Some very innovative things are going on right now in our service territory. You know, about parking apps, looking for
Yeah, Port Washington,
for
right?
parking if you ride share and that sort of thing, and even you know satellite parking facilities that service. I think there's a lot of parking on Long Island. It's just not all located right at the station, so we have to figure out how to connect those resources.
I know that there are other questions or comments, but we are pressing on 12:30, so at this point, I'd like to again thank the panel for your great insight.